Harrison Price for Thursday, December 5th, 2024, coming in from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. We got a big show planned for you today, as the Vancouver Canucks return to Rogers Arena after a couple of weeks on the road with all sorts of roster machinations.
Oh, my gosh.
We'll get into that in a second. Whoa.
Comings and goings, and yeah.
They are wearing out that highway from Abbotsford to Rogers Arena. But we'll start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question in light of the Four Nations Faceoff rosters being announced yesterday. When we did the program, we were still awaiting the Canadian and U.S. rosters. We have those now. What would you rather watch? International best-on-best hockey or the Stanley Cup playoffs? You can vote at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. Blake Price, I ask you.
I put off even thinking about this question until this very moment, even though I was part of the construct of it.
It was of your design.
Yes. But now that I've actually been asked to invest feelings into it.
Hold on.
Yeah.
It's with the puffy coat.
I know, I realize
You're going back to puffy coat.
I was cold this morning.
Please. It's making noise. I can't abide the puffy coat. When we used to do the show back in the old studio, and particularly the years that it was on TSN from coast to coast, the number of people who would text, email, sometimes call, or even hit me up personally. Why does Blake wear a puffy coat in the studio?
I always sit under the vent. I've got one above me again.
He does sit under vents, so there is that, but it's not that cold.
Mm-hmm. It is cold in here.
It's not that cold, says the guy in long underwear and two sweatshirts.
And you get up and move around. I just sit
yeah,
down.
Yeah, no, exactly. I like to move. I like to keep the blood going, flowing.
The answer for me is going to be Stanley Cup playoffs. Back to the poll question, not to distract. Because
you're already distracting.
Because I have seen success. I have felt success on numerous occasions cheering on the Red Maple Leaf.
So you're satisfied.
If I'm putting well, you're never ever fully satisfied because there's always a new year. There's always a new tournament. But I've seen it. I've seen the movie. I know what it looks like. I don't know what being in a Stanley Cup winning city looks like.
Has it not been long enough since Sochi for you to recapture those feelings? Last Canada Cup was 87.
What do you mean? No, 91.
Wasn't that the World Cup of hockey?
Nope.
Oh, that was the Canada Cup?
Yep.
Sorry, my bad. The last Canada Cup was 91. Then we had that World Cup of hockey in, 96? The one the U.S. won?
Yeah.
And then it was 02 with the Salt Lake City Olympics.
Oh, Nagano, 98.
Right. God, I'm getting this all messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Our victories. Best on best.
Yes.
91 Canada Cup to 2002 Salt Lake City, a period of 11 years.
Correct.
That was enough to wet everybody's whistle, albeit you're quite right, contextually, with the two defeats at the Nagano Olympics. Didn't even medal, huh? The Czechs.
There was a shootout.
There was a shootout. There was Dominic Hasek. If you're a younger Dominic Hasek, go check him out. He was pretty good.
Trevor Linder got a goal there.
Yeah. Here's Big Lindros. He's got a score. No. There was the defeats at the 96 World Cup, which was a fantastic hockey game. Like, it did not go our way. The U.S. Won that, and the defeats in Nagano.
Of course,
but the 11 years was enough to wet the whistle that the country was teeming. for that 0-2 Salt Lake City gold medal game.
I think everybody wants to see McKinnon, McDavid, Crosby all in the same ice.
Yes.
I get that. Mm-hmm. But it's more of a fascination rather than something I think that courses through the veins of a local fan. It's a differing depth.
The television numbers would strongly dispute that.
What do you mean?
International hockey? When Canada plays in a big international game, the country is switched on.
Because it applies to the entire country.
Right.
The Canucks playing Game 3 against the Preds, it applies to just BC.
Well, there are people who watch out-of-market games who watch the league at
in much lower ratios.
Fair.
Yeah.
So you voted Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's many different ways to define international best on best. Look, the lows of international hockey are lower than the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of that, there's no doubt. When there are minnows out there. When you're playing Switzerland, who's just trying to prevent goals as opposed to score any themselves. But for me, the best of international hockey exceeds the best of the Stanley Cup playoffs. The 2010 Olympic gold medal game is still the finest hockey game I have ever watched. There is something about watching the Maple Leaf, to me, that stirs an emotion that no club crest can match. Now, I'm a little bit of a different story. I don't really root in the NHL. I do when we get to international hockey. When Canada's playing the U.S. or Russia in a gold medal game, like that is stop the world content for me. The first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs is awesome. If your team is in it, it's awesome. If you're a neutral, particularly as it slogs into the early stages of the third round, for me, that's less compelling.
Here's what I'm worried about with the Four Nations Faceoff, though.
That people aren't invested?
Because of what it is. Like, for instance, Canada versus the United States in women's hockey. Mm-hmm. At the Olympics, even at the World Championships, glued to my seat, cannot wait to watch every second of it.
They play perhaps the best games of any two rivals in any form of hockey. We were talking yesterday about how good these Oilers Golden Knights games are in the regular season by regular season standards in the NHL. But when the Canadian women and the U.S. women play virtually anywhere for any stakes, they tend to produce some of the more compelling.
For stakes, though. Like this rivalry series that they play, could not care less about the Canada versus the
stakes aren't there.
The stakes aren't there.
Right.
Worlds and Olympics, yes. But so is the Four Nations Faceoff bigger than a rivalry series between Canada and the U.S.? Yes, but it's certainly falling short of anything called a World Championship, a World Cup, a Canada Cup, or an Olympics.
Mm-hmm. So I'm with you in terms of the Four Nations face-off. I'm not yet sure how much I'm going to invest in it.
Yeah.
In part because it is a naked cash grab from Gary and the owners and the players as well. They're jealous that the Olympics has this best on best tournament that every 4 years, or at least every 4 years prior to the last two Winter Olympics, that the hockey world stops for and goes, oh my God, is this amazing? So they had to get their fingers in the pie. They needed to wet their beak. And so they've created this tournament. Now, the last World Cup of hockey that they put on with the gimmicky teams, I couldn't abide. It has been some time now, though, since we've seen best on best. And must say, while I wouldn't want this to be a regular thing, I'm quite intrigued by Canada as underdog storyline, because I think on paper the United States has a better team, and we shall see. When it comes to the Olympics, forget about it. Like, to me, that's the be-all, end-all. To me, there is a significant difference between playing for one of the great prizes in global sport, one of the most coveted prizes in global sport for more than damn near a century and a half now, and playing for a NHL/NHLPA construct. There's a difference there.
Yeah.
You could call the Canada Cup back in the day a construct, and it was, But of course, we didn't have best on best in the Olympics then, right? We had Russia's best versus a ragtag collection of who we could get to play for Canada at a senior.
Depends on the year.
Yeah, fair.
Korea and Nedved was a pretty good year.
Yeah, well, but that was the thing. Like, it was like, oh, Glenn Anderson isn't playing right now. Glenn, come play for Canada. There was a lot of that going on, right? And would have loved to invest in our plucky amateurs against the Russians, but we would get steamrolled. You remember, was it Calgary or Syria, or maybe both, where it was just unfair. So, yeah, at the highest levels of the Olympics, I am absolutely international hockey over the Stanley Cup playoffs. At the lesser constructs of international hockey, even if they are, quote, best on best, I hear what you're saying.
I'm going to carve out time to watch Canada-US. The other games, I'm sure, will be on in my house, but I will not be waited with bated breath.
Like, in 2002, I watched every Olympic game I could.
Yeah.
Like, I was fixed to the Swedish games and the Finnish games and the Czech, like, all of them. Mm-hmm. Because we hadn't seen it in so long. Four Nations, I'm not sure I'm 100% there yet. Surrey Mitsubishi. We've told you about the 2024. It's going fast. Now it is lease month. Lease a car, better option, lower monthly payment, the convenience of staying under warranty, minimal maintenance costs. You can drive a new vehicle every few years. Plus, you avoid the long-term commitment of ownership and the depreciation hit of ownership. This month at Surrey Mitsubishi, you can lease an Outlander PHEV 2024 for $182 a week. If you want a gas option, Outlander Gas 2024, yours for $105 a week. The Eclipse Cross, just $100 a week. And the RVR, only $87 a week. Plus, you can skate away with up to $1,000 winter tire credit and a no-charge 2-year maintenance package. And don't miss out on this $5,000 government rebate on the Outlander PHEV while it lasts. See dealer for details. All leases are OAC. 1380 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca. Top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Roster moves and LTIR arrives, Blake. The Vancouver Canucks today placed defenseman Philip Roenick on LTIR. They recall Jonathan Lekkerimäki and Cole McWard from the American Hockey League's Abbotsford Canucks, and they send Max Sasson back down to the farm. At practice today, Kevin Lankinen and Thatcher Demko, the only two goalies on the ice. Demko has his own net. Dan Murphy believes that Sheilov skated beforehand. Derek Forbert is there in place of Quinn Hughes. A maintenance day for Quinn Hughes. And Rick Dollywall's reporting that JT Miller has skated, which is terrific news. All right. Where you want to pick up on that, because we got a lot of moving parts here with the Canucks and the roster heading into this homestand and tomorrow's return game against the Columbus Blue Jackets.
You had a tough start to the show. Max Sasson was recalled as well. He's with Vancouver Canucks. He was sent down
yesterday.
Yes, okay. Recalled up. So he was. So the lines are the same at practice. And you know, the big news to me is the fact that Thatcher Demko was looking like Thatcher Demko at practice. That's the biggest news. In terms of the actual roster machinations, I'm not really here nor there on the LTIR, because unless there's somebody filling up the LTIR, it's not that big a deal just yet. I suspected that he would get to LTIR eventually, and they're just dipping their toe right now. They have the ability to move it up as they fill up the roster. There's the cushion there if they wanted to add another Philip Roenick-esque salary. You snooker yourself later on in the season, potentially, if you do that, though, of course. So we'll see. We're not telling them anything that they don't know in the Canucks front office. They see the math of it. They were very clearly on top of this, which is why they were trying to accrue the cap space that they were. So I'm sure they have a plan. We'll see what that is, but I'm sure Sheilov's is going to be announced that he'll be on his way down, would be my guess, to make the roster numbers work. But it looks like Demko is a thing, And based on the reporting that Rick Dollywell had, that JT Miller is skating already, maybe that activation is not too far away either, which would mean another body has to go down.
It very much looks like Demko is poised to start tomorrow. And I say tomorrow, not Sunday, against the Tampa Bay Lightning, because that's a matinee, everybody, and that's a different warm-up. In fact, warm-up is small case W when you have a 1 p.m. start.
Different warm-up, but it's a much easier warm down, which is what a lot of people were fretting about, his ability to properly take care of it after the game. So you take away from one, but you add to the other.
But, Demko, and we've seen some of the clips from practice, like that looks full Monty. That looks like what a full practice would look like.
Even a lunging,
exactly.
A lunging left to right save.
I mean, they're asking him to defend those sorts of rush plays that you would see in a game.
Do the things.
Yeah, like those are the things that this popliteus muscle has to go through to be ready, and so that is excellent news for the Canucks. Now, on the Roenick LTIR business. So, and there's a very good article on Canucks Army that explains a lot of it. I would direct you to it right now. So, it doesn't mean you can stop accruing cap space. You have to be both over the salary cap and on LTIR to do that. But here's where we're at. So, they recalled Lekkerimäki, McWard, placed Roenick on LTIR. That put them over the salary cap by about $8,000. And that halts the accrual. Now, they've got Demko and Miller that are showing up right now as non-roster players. Derek Forbert's on injured reserve. He is practicing, though. As the article points out, as soon as two of those three are activated, and would it surprise you at all if Demko and Forbert were activated for tomorrow?
Forbert, yes, but potential.
So let's say Sunday or at some point on this homestand.
Yeah, for sure.
Then the Canucks will be below the salary cap, even with Roenick on LTIR. Basically, they can now exceed the salary cap. Once that happens, they can exceed the salary cap by $7.242 million. So that's the entirety of Roenick's salary minus the $8,000 that we have talked about. So that cap space is there temporarily while Roenick is out. So we talked about yesterday, you do have to have a plan for what happens when the player comes back, and the entirety of his salary has to be accounted for. But for the time being, the Canucks could go out and add someone with this $7 million of space that they have and figure it out how they're going to make all the pieces work at a later date.
Gillis and Gilman would have figured it out later. Right? They would have said, we got a lot of guys that are banged up. We can put one of them on LTIR for 3 weeks. It'll be fine.
Yeah. And these are the sorts of practices that now go on in NHL front offices.
And then last year was a freak of nature for the Canucks in that they were as healthy as they are. Generally, somebody is nicked that you can throw on LTIR for 3 weeks. And maybe you just rotate that LTIR door. Everybody's missing 9 games at a time.
But the good news here, Demko looks awfully close if he isn't ready. And, they'll speak here shortly. And if we get any word there, we will absolutely report. We got J-Pat at practice. Forbert is on the comeback trail here. And it looks like Lekkerimäki and McWard are going to get some opportunities here going forward. The one thing I'll say about Lekkerimäki, they got to play him with skill. So where are you playing him? Are you playing him with Pettersson and DeBrusk and moving Garland off? Do we think that Pettersson and DeBrusk have to stay together here?
Pettersson and DeBrusk do, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So where are you playing him? Suter and...
Well, I don't think he plays tomorrow.
Okay.
My guess is Lekkerimäki is here for emergency purposes for Friday. And here will be my hot take. JT Miller plays on Sunday.
Oh, wow. That is hot.
And they drop him into the lineup for that one.
Yeah. Just it was 5 games, it was 1 goal for Lekkerimäki, but a beautiful goal, right? I'm not sure you get much out of Lekkerimäki unless you play him with skill. Now, in McWard's case, I think he's going to play simply because when you look at where they're at on the right side without Hronek, obviously you're going to play Myers. Juleson had some very nice moments here on this road trip, so I think Juleson's going to play too. But then it's Desharnais and Friedman that you're up against. So I think it's quite reasonable that we're going to see Cole McWard. We saw him right at the beginning of last year, right?
For 1 game only.
For 1 game only. And then we saw him, how many was it? 5 at the end of
when he
the
first
previous year.
By the way, Lekkerimäki, since he went down, has been down for 5 games with the Abbey Canucks. 1 goal, no assists in those 5 games. And his last 2 games, a -4 combined. The shots were there, though. I mean, the shot totals, minimum 2 is his floor when he plays. And he's got a lot of games of 6, 5, and even an 8-shot game this season down in Abbey. So he's still doing his thing. Maybe the puck just wasn't going in as easily here in the last 5 games. But based on line rushes, he's the 13th forward for tomorrow. We'll see if that changes during the game day skate, presuming that they have one. And I would guess that they do, actually. Any concern on Quinn Hughes' absence for you?
Well, just a little.
After a day off yesterday already.
But after a long trip where he played a lot of minutes. As John Shannon mentioned it last week, Patrick Johnston has mentioned it to us. We talked about it earlier in the week. Hughes is playing through something. He's not 100%. So I think it's wise to get him maintenance days when you can.
This is the last 2-day break until Christmas.
Right.
So do you allow some healing?
All that context together,
yeah.
No. But I do think Quinn's health and well-being is something to monitor here.
Well, I would bet there's a lot of maintenance days between now and Christmas with only single day off. And then there is a 2-game back-to-back road trip, 18th and 19th, both on the road in the deserts of Utah and Nevada. Matt, I'm going to bet that if there are practices, and I bet you there's not a lot of practices here in the next 2.5 weeks, if there are practices, sparsely attended by the superstars at the very least, because they've got to get to the 4-day Christmas break, and they got to do it healthy.
Yeah, it's we're entering a busy and more difficult part of the schedule than we have seen in the opening couple of months. And we went through it earlier in the week. It's not like you've got a lot of world beaters here in December, but the quality of opponent, I would argue, does tick up a little bit from what we've seen, and it's the frequency of all these games that you note, including
the one plus side thing too,
Utah
Matt,
and Vegas.
4 of the next 5 games are non-conference games, which they're generally a little less heavy, right? Like we saw the difference between that Minnesota Wild game and the rest of that road trip.
Yeah. That said, they've had some spicy affairs with non-conference, like Florida, for example. Been a ton of spicy Canucks-Panthers games over the years.
And they are coming.
Yeah, and they are coming a week from today.
They're just a good team. I think they know that you don't take nights off now. Maybe that's just it.
What are Yellow Dog, Neighborhood, and Foolish up to these days?
The Good Times West Coast IPA is what they're up to. Neighborhood releasing that beer with its bold, crisp, and delicious brew of Simcoe, Citra, and Mosaic hops. It's a fabulous West Coast IPA. Big tropical citrus and pine notes. Go check it out from Neighborhood Brewing.
The North American rosters, Brock Besser, Thatcher Demko do not make Team USA. JT Miller and Quinn Hughes do. Now, in Demko's case, they could have easily named him and then replaced him if he wasn't ready, or replaced him if he didn't want to play. They chose not to. They chose to go with Hellebuck, Ottinger, and Swayman. the USA's cup when it comes to goaltenders overfloweth.
That's the thing. So they just don't need to do the Demko plan that you talked about. If they were a thinner nation, for sure.
Besser does not make the U.S. ranks at the wing. That said, he's in pretty good company there. As we've talked about, that is a terrific United States team, and there are a bunch of pretty good forwards that fell short of Team USA. Are you at all surprised that Besser?
No. When you look at who's on and the versatility, there's a few blandish centers, like a Brock Nelson, for instance, who can play down the middle. And so I think the versatility there is probably what gets some of those guys that have blander numbers than Besser. But when you look at who's off, like Cole Caulfield, the guy is USA hockey to a T. He has only, the guy plays in every tournament for USA hockey, not on the team. Like, all that precedent for Cole Caulfield, not on the team. Clayton Keller, for the same
Tage
reason.
Thompson, it is, and we always say this about Canada, but this is the one year where you look at the Team USA snubs and go, wow, their second team would be pretty good here too.
Yeah.
So, no, I wasn't surprised to see Besser left off, although I did see him mocked up.
They are an older team, that Team USA. That's all the snubs are guys in their prime. Mm-hmm. They've gone with guys that are shoulder prime.
Were you surprised at Trocheck? There were a couple of the Team USA picks that I was a little bit surprised with.
Trocheck and Nelson stood out to me. I was like, I could imagine a team without those guys on them.
Yes.
Easily. But I get it also. Mm-hmm. Experience, North American ice, all that.
Trocheck, a right shot center. And, of course, they're also saying here that they anticipate that JT Miller will be good to go for them when this tournament starts.
Right.
In February.
And given Besser's health, probably best he watches, honestly, from a Canucks perspective.
Yep. And as we know, Liz Pettersson for Sweden, Kevin Lankinen, who I think will be the third goaltender for Finland.
He's got great stats, but his stats rank third next to those two other guys.
Yeah. And, of course, he's not the most credentialed guy with Finland either, right, when you're looking at UC Saros. So those two players and then the two American players for the Canucks. And, of course, Rick Tocchet is going to be assisting on the Canadian bench. As for Team Canada, I got to say, usually with a best-on-best Canadian roster, there are one or two that I look at and go, that one could have gone another way, or I'm going a different way there. I think you can get up to 5 on this team that I find curious to questionable. Want to run them down?
I'll take 2 of them. I'll tell you who of your 5.
So, well, let's work from the goal out.
Yeah.
I was really surprised it was Montembeault over Logan Thompson.
Agreed.
But it's third string goaltender, so
But here's my thing:
no one's litigating that. That's not a capital case.
Statistically, and I saw Rachel Dory go down the road on this and others as well. Logan Thompson's at the top of the heap statistically of all these goalies.
Yeah.
Top of the heap, should be starting.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a good point because the third string goalie this time for Canada, that might actually be a thing. It's a very short tournament. Of course, Binnington and Hill look to be the candidates to start.
And Matt,
but would it if Thompson had stayed on the heater, would it have stunned me that Thompson got the nod? No.
And
he's not a flash in the pan either.
He's not a flash in the pan either. Thompson's career save percentage is the same as his percentage this season.
And
that's in 116 NHL games, his career save percentage is .912. That's really good in today's NHL.
Well, and that's a Washington team that's without Alexander Ovechkin right now and still winning games.
10-1-2.
Yeah, no, he's been awesome. On defense, I was surprised to see Colton Parayko and Travis Sanheim make it. I, like many others, thought that Evan Bouchard, Mackenzie Weegar would be your guys there.
I know we like to hate on Evan Bouchard come playoff time. To me, that's the robbery there. Like, Evan Bouchard has really rounded out his game, I think, and that's a pretty nice player. I'm surprised. But, and this has been the conventional wisdom since this roster started to get leaked, is this Canada team built to defend shitty goaltending?
I think that is exactly what's happened here.
And so rather than go with a two-way presence or even an offensive-leaning guy in Bouchard, they've gone with concrete blocks. A lot more than they have with the guys that can move the puck.
Yeah.
Good concrete blocks, but concrete blocks.
Now, the question I would ask is, do you have offensive and defensive-minded guys on both pairs that you feel comfortable with? And as I look at the Canadian roster, I think I do. How much offense are you getting from the right side of that defense? Not entirely sure. Like, McCarr's going to play with Taves, right? Like, that is our suspicion.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, do you also want to play the two Vegas Golden Knights guys together? Do you want to play Pietrangelo and Theodore together?
Probably. It saves you searching for chemistry.
Did I say right side? I mean left side. Yeah. So you got McCarr on the right side with Taves. You've got Pietrangelo with Theodore. So, I mean, I think Josh Morrissey's your. Frankly, I would of the list. Josh Morrissey, I think, is your second best defenseman after McCarr.
I mean, right? Yeah, he's offensive leaning, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you got Morrissey as the left shot guy there. Who are you playing him with?
Well, I think
because this is
think
where
everybody thinks Sanheim's the eighth defenseman.
Because this is where I sort of looked at it and went, a right shot guy beside Morrissey. That's where I thought your Bouchard fit was, or even Weegar because he plays both sides. So I was a little surprised there. Count me amongst the many who were surprised with Seth Jarvis and Sam Bennett. And I understand that Sam Bennett has been extraordinary in high-level games the last two Stanley Cup playoffs.
Well, and his start to the season this year has been spectacular, too.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Jarvis?
Those that like him a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, I saw people cheering on this appointment.
And are the forward snubs, most notable forward snubs, Suzuki and John Tavares?
Yep. Okay. But I mean, Tavares, his time is gone. I don't mind the omission of
Scheifele be on that list as well of omissions?
Scheifele's getting longer in the tooth too.
Hyman, it's just a poor start to this year. Stamkos too old. Tom Wilson, I guess you didn't feel like you needed that element.
Correct. The Hyman one would have been completely unpredictable. Like Hyman, his lack of offense had him drop off the table.
I think so. I think if Hyman is showing incredible chemistry with Connor McDavid again, right here, right now, I think they probably take him. But he's had such a tough go.
If you looked at all the prognostications a year ago as they looked ahead to this tournament, Hyman's on all the lists.
Okay. And then Suzuki and Thomas, too, huh?
Yeah.
And those are younger centermen as well. Anyways, look, I don't have massive problems with Jarvis Bennett. I think I have a bigger problem with Sanheim and to some degree Parayko. Like, Parayko several years ago, absolutely. But I thought that one was a little curious. And I do think you're right. They're building a team to defend lest they have shitty goaltending. Whereas I have always been of the opinion, we're Canada. This is the best hockey talent in the world. come at them with waves, fleets of offense, make them defend a fourth line that has speedsters and guys who are great stick handlers and shooters. Just keep coming at them. Because, Mike Babcock, of all people, I think taught us a lesson about best-on-best tournaments and picking best-on-best teams going into Sochi. Because as you may remember, and granted that was on the bigger European ice, Mike Babcock had maybe the greatest collection of hockey talent ever assembled in one dressing room at his disposal. And they played really boring defensive hockey en route to a gold medal. And then Mike had his FU press conference where he came in afterwards with the game sheet. Who led the tournament in scoring? Does anybody care? And he dropped it. You remember that? He dropped it on the table and walked out. Alain Vigneault told us a story going into that tournament that Babcock approached him after AV was coaching the Rangers at the time. Babcock was coaching. Was it the Leafs? Who was he coaching? Was he still in Detroit? Who was Babcock coaching when we went to Sochi in 2014?
I would still be the Wings, I think.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, sorry. It was Detroit. And he said to Alain, he said, I'm going to take your guy Nash, and we're going to play him on the penalty kill. And Alain was a little taken aback because, he was not playing Nash on the Rangers penalty kill. But Babcock's thing was good hockey players can play the defensive side of the puck. That guys at that level with that sort of hockey IQ and all the requisite athletic tools, okay, maybe they're not the most experienced penalty killers. There might be a guy or two that you want to shelter when protecting a lead or not throw on the PK, but most of the guys at that level can play in all situations.
I remember the Sedins asking to be in the PK.
With Torts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So 3 British Columbians on the team: Abbotsford's Devon Taves, West Vancouver Sam Reinhart, Aldergrove's Shea Theodore.
And the lawyer from Prince George.
Of course, John Cooper, the lawyer from Prince George. We're not running through the whole staff, are we?
Okay. No.
Okay.
Head coach, though. Come on.
Yeah, okay. All right. BC Snubs. Bedard and Celebrini.
Yeah, not ready.
Their day will come.
Don't mind it. Don't mind it at all.
Coquitlam's Matthew Barzell. Maybe not quite at this level. West Van's Morgan Riley a few years ago on this team.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I concur with all that.
Okay.
Barzell can be at this level. I just don't think he's at it right
Barzell's totals tend to be suppressed a little bit by defensive-minded coaching and systems and Lou and everything on the island.
Yeah, just a team that does not allow that to flourish.
So when I was going through the BC content here, I was reminded of the fact that in the past, you and I have talked about the true Canada Cup. The provincial Canada Cup. BC, Alberta, the Prairies, Ontario, Quebec, the Maritimes.
Now's the time to make that happen with Bedard and Celebrini coming. Now's the time.
I thought that too. So
not this year, but in 4 years or something?
Right.
Absolutely.
I thought that too. So I mocked up my BC team.
Still a little bony?
It's pretty good.
Yeah?
Take a look. Mike's got the graphic there. I got Macklin with Jamie Benn and Sam Reinhart. That's a damn good first line.
But it depends on when we're doing this, because in 4 years, Jamie's not playing.
Well, no.
Yeah.
This is the here and now.
Oh, here and now? Okay.
I want to play Nuge with Bedard, and I got Bedard as the centerman there, but either could, because Nuge is accustomed to setting up great shooters, great players.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Surrey's big Michael Rasmussen to clean up all the garbage after Bedard is.
I'd put Nuge down the middle and Bedard on the wing. But
that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Whatever. Barzell with Kent Johnson and Logan Stankov, and I like the look of that line, too. There's some pace in that line, too.
Yeah.
Colton Sissons as a checking centerman, Danton Heinen, Canucks. I've put young Zach Benson there as another potential offensive piece, and Alex Kerfoot as my 13th forward. Morgan Riley, Devon Taves. We are a little shy on right shots in my top four. I will cop to that. Theodore and Byram. We're going to play Bo over on the right side. Brendan Dillon and Dante Fabro, who is a legit right shot, and then Tyson Berry if I needed sort of a power play quarter if somebody goes down as my.
And we don't get to claim Dylan Cousins?
I don't think we get to claim Dylan Cousins. If you're telling me I get the territories with BC, then I would have Cousins instead of Kerfoot.
I think he started playing in BC as of about the age of 14.
Right. So I think I went with birthplace.
Yes, okay.
I understand there would be a number of guys there who might have dual eligibility or even triple eligibility based on where they were raised. So please don't hold me to somebody who wasn't born in BC but was raised here.
There's born, raised, and trained. Those are the three factors.
Yeah, exactly.
But born is the cleanest.
Well,
sure.
I just went with born, so forgive me.
Okay.
Which gets me Aiden Hill in goal. Otherwise, we're Tristan Jarry.
Or Laurent Brossois. Yes.
Or young Ravensbergen up in PG.
There's that too.
Yeah. So there you go. It's never going to happen. It is such a fun exercise. The Provincial Canada Cup one day. Okay. So back to the Canucks here for a second. Saw what JPAT tweeted and thought to myself, we haven't shouted this guy enough over the last week. Carson Soucy is amongst the guys who has stepped up here in the absence of Philip Roenick. Huh?
Yeah.
Like early season Carson Soucy minus Roenick. And we were contemplating that at this time last week. We were going, oh my God, that Carson Soucy, Tyler Myers pair has been a disaster. Now you're losing Roenick. How terrible can this get? Boy, you got to hand it to Soucy. Past 3 games. And particularly as Jeff notes on the penalty kill in Buffalo. We were wondering earlier this season, is this just a really bad spell for Carson Soucy, or are you starting to see the diminishment of the player? Like, are you seeing a hard defenseman who has played hard minutes and had him some injuries start to fade in terms of his NHL career? So that is a superb development for the Canucks, and I'm sure they hope it keeps up tomorrow against Columbus and through the
honestly
weekend.
Thought his last game versus Minnesota was amongst the more noticeable games he's played as a
Vancouver Canuck. Fair.
So,
and of course,
let's hope it's a trend.
Soucy, Minnesota, from whence he came once upon a time. You remember we did the bubble playoff series against Minnesota, and all the intel was, don't sleep on this third pair young defenseman they got in Soucy. You remember that?
I don't remember that. Really? Okay.
Yeah. Elliot Friedman, 32 thoughts. Pittsburgh has real interest in Nils Höglander. And as we know, there's a facile trading environment between Patrick Allvin, Jim Rutherford, and their former mates in Pittsburgh. Well, I say that, although Kyle Dubas is new there, right? Do you think this is a matter of time before we hear some sort of deal with Höglander and Pettersson?
I would put it more
Marcus
likely
Pettersson,
than not.
that is Marcus Pettersson coming over from Pittsburgh.
I mean, maybe more likely than not. I mean, honestly, Matt, I'm at the stage where I think that is one of 2 defensive moves that happens for this team before the end of the season. Like, you do that to shore up your left side, and you never have to worry about your left side the rest of the season. And then you work on picking up your to me, the right side. You can make that deal, and I don't even qualify that as a big deal. Like, I like Nils Höglander, but trading your $3 million winger for that quality defenseman, that's just a trade, and you just sort of like, yep, that happened. You move that over. Then I think you go out and make your big splash trying to find your right shot defenseman. And I don't know how you accomplish it, but we'll leave that up to them. But I think if this team has serious intentions about the Stanley Cup, I think that's what needs to happen here this season. 2 deals.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, of course, this management team started to be assembled 3 years ago today.
Yeah.
The dismissal of Jim Benning and Travis Green, Soon thereafter, the hiring of Bruce Boudreau, Francesco embarked on his global search for a new president of hockey operations, and some 48 hours later, landed on Jim Rutherford.
The world is a village. You can 48 hours is good.
Stan Smeel had 48 hours there where he was the man in charge. 72 hours maybe before they arrived on Rutherford. Of course, Rutherford brought Alvin. They fired Bruce. They hired Rick Tocchet. And the rest is a happy chapter so far in Vancouver Canucks history.
Yeah.
Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta. Greta, fantastic spot for all the games, home and away. Your steps from the stadium and the arena. I understand there are some concerts this weekend. Greta would be an awesome spot to pre-concert. They have a bitchin' arcade there. And fantastic street food as well. Weekly drink specials. Greta, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. We'll talk to Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media here on the Vancouver Canucks beat. He did the story with Jim Rutherford yesterday. He very much wants to clarify something in that story that seemingly a lot of people got wrong, including us. He had license to yell at us. He didn't. Well, he did actually prior to recording.
Yes, too bad.
Anyway, yeah, no, I know. I told Mike, I said, hit record. Just do it right now. Don't even tell him. Anyways, Patrick's going to join us. Rob Williams is going to join us as well. We'll talk DeBrusk there, not to mention Höglander as well.
Well, and Four Nations, too. I asked him point blank, do you think Canuck fans would be okay losing to the United States if the Canucks were the ones that ran roughshod? So you can hear his answer on that.
I think you're right. Time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. Now, I picked a future game yesterday, Blake, so I don't have a win or loss to account
myself
for
as
you
well.
too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will maintain the honor here. This is an attractive Thursday night football game with Green Bay and Detroit.
That was my future, remember? I got Detroit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Detroit is averaging 14.5 points in the second quarter alone, and read this week that would be the highest scoring quarter for a team over the course of a season in NFL history. The Packers can score some too. I think we're in line for a terrific football game tonight and a lot of points on the board. That's what I'll be rooting for as a neutral. Give me the over 52 on Thursday Night Football. Packers, Lions, let's have some fun.
This is like Thanksgiving leftovers.
Well, Detroit, of course, plays all the Thanksgiving games. Yeah. So if you want to tell me with this Detroit team, because back in the day, like once on primetime as a standalone game, I guess not primetime, but as a standalone game, that was enough for the football world to see the Detroit Lions. But with Dan Campbell and this team, and they're so much fun to watch. I mean, I'm a Bears fan. They're in division, and yet I sit there, I watch them. The play calling that Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, who will be an NFL head coach one day, the two backs, Montgomery, Gibbs, the receivers, especially Williams when he's healthy and available, not to mention St. Brown, they are oodles of fun. And frankly, like, you know, hate to admit it, but like Green Bay's fun too.
Green Bay's good.
You know, Jacobs, the young quarterback there. So give me the over. And yeah, if Detroit's going to play every Thanksgiving Thursday and then get the Thursday nighter a week later, subscribe me for that as well.
Buffalo and Winnipeg tonight in the National Hockey League.
The Jets are fading here, huh?
Jets are fading.
As we thought they might.
In fact, the Canucks have fewer losses than the Winnipeg Jets now. And
wow.
How is that
How did
happen?
that happen? They won, how many did they win?
15-1 out of the gate.
Yeah. Look, as we said when they were on the heater, good team, but let's not crown them here. Let's not get out of hand thinking that Winnipeg's going to run away with the President's Trophy.
Second place in their division already. But Tage Thompson gets a chance to get his anger out.
Yeah.
And he gets to do it against a team that is led by a Team USA compadre and Kyle Connor.
There you go.
So he's mano a mano versus Kyle Connor. Tage Thompson, anytime goal scorer, plus 175.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Patrick Johnston coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
So Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss, with a history dating back more than 100 years. Proudly Canadian-owned, operated, committed to customer satisfaction. Check out the large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They have mined diamonds available with payment plans to suit your needs. 5 locations in BC: Abbotsford, Victoria, Chilliwack, Willowbrook, and Langley. Coquitlam Center. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, shine bright. Patrick Johnston of The Province and Post Media, always shining bright. And he's got a bee in his bonnet this morning because people are misunderstanding the story he wrote yesterday, quoting Canucks President of Hockey Operations Jim Rutherford on the JT Miller trade rumors. But is it trade rumors?
Well, let's first of all shout out to the my buddies on the Predators.
Stop the salacious speculation, reads the headline.
Shout out to my buddies on the Predators out at 8 Rinks who quizzed me post game last night.
Oh, really?
I'm sure they did. I've been everybody I meet these days pulls me and says, "So what's really going on with JT Miller? I don't know if you can say too much if you know, but what's really
PJ,
going on?"
you
with
should
JT?
see what a
I've
hockey dad said to me the other day.
6 times in the last week.
A hockey
I know.
dad the other day, like I heard it was. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, I had somebody call me the other night, Matt. Just so you know, here's what I know about JT Miller.
This is like Connor Bedard's thing, right?
Yeah, well,
Right,
someone said to me, maybe the Canucks should have a press conference and just be like, listen, there's all kinds of stuff swirling around. I get people. People are so thirsty for a scandal. It's actually unbelievable. But anyway, so in this note, I start hearing stuff. Listen, what people do in their lives, who knows? I don't know. I don't know if any of this stuff's true. I just don't even want to get into that. But I sit there and go, there is a lot of noise, and people are talking about all kinds of things. And so I called up Jim Rutherford. And I asked him why. I wanted to mostly ask about the Hronek stuff. I have a story up today. They're not in a rush to make a trade, by the way. But then we also came to. I said, "Listen, Jim." I sort of probed. I was going to ask off, and he goes, "No, we can talk about it." And I said, he goes, "I don't know. We don't know when Miller's going to be back." And then I kind of make this offhand comment about, there's a lot of people chatting about a lot of different things. And he goes, essentially what you saw. He said people should stop speculating about personal stuff. And then he goes, but you know what? Just get back to making up trade rumors. And it wasn't. He was very calm and reasonable. But people, there's some people seem to be some people out there who think he laughed out at
cranky.
me.
It sounded cranky. It sounded cranky.
Yeah.
But I understand where the confusion comes in because immediately when he follows with the trade rumor stuff, it sounds like he
was having a bit of fun, and he was having a bit of fun. He said, "No, listen." As he said, I said off the top, he knows information vacuums create chatter, and he's spot on. And
he's one of the. Especially in the Carolina days, he was one of the biggest sources for all the insiders out there. Like down there in Carolina with no hockey attention, Jimmy was quite a talker.
So listen,
Pittsburgh too.
You can perhaps quibble with how they handle it, whatever. But here we are. They are very aware that in the end, you say one thing, people are inevitably going to want to talk about other things. But essentially, his point is, there's a personal issue here. Let's leave it alone. Let's get you guys. Fill your boots with trade rumors. But also, and then so I went, because he said it, and then I was like, oh, great, thanks, Jim. And I was like, wait, and I called him back. I said, Jim, just to be clear, you're not trading him, right? He goes, no. Oh, and then there's the question at the bottom, right?
Wow.
He goes, no, absolutely not.
With regards to the tone, with regards to the tone being implied here, first of all,
don't imply any tone.
this organization does make its own bed, though, a little bit. You know, they are so top down so often. They love to lecture everybody on everything that if people attach tone where there is none, you know.
I'm just saying, in this particular, and that was why I asked Matt before the show. Matt, how are people reading this into it? Because I thought it was a very nice, reasonable conversation. Yeah. Leading off with, you know, he was happy to be back in Pittsburgh because Matt Cullen and Kevin Stephens, two people he has a ton of time for, are going into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. He was in a very good mood.
Duly noted.
But to be clear, they're not trading JT Miller while he's on personal leave, right?
I guess. I did not.
Once
I'm sorry.
he's off
I didn't
personal
clarify.
leave, are they willing to listen to Chris Drury and others who seem to be beating down the door for JT Miller?
It was a pretty firm no, I think. I mean, I did not clarify any time frame when they might trade him, but to be honest, it was a pretty no. We're not trading, We stand by our player.
So, and I noticed your story also said, you know, the ball is now in JT Miller's court. I hope I'm quoting it accurately.
Yes,
and you have also been the one who noted that, look, this has not yet been made clear whether this was totally on JT's volition or in concert with the team, although it certainly sounds like the team may have been involved here. I'm not sure if it was the
that part
push.
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't been
if it was the initial push or just the team was like, yes, we think this is a good idea. Let's do this together.
Yeah.
So the question becoming, you know, can we put Humpty Dumpty back together again? Like when he's ready to return, is everything going to be fine here? Can he get back to being the star player and catalyst number one centerman that the Vancouver Canucks and their fans know and love?
Whether it's true or not, that's a great question. Certainly the positioning the Canucks are taking on all this is that, yeah, absolutely, that this is going to be a exactly. I think your analogy is great. That yes, absolutely, they will be able to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. That's, I mean, yeah. So there's not many details around it other than clearly this is about getting his head right. The mountain fell down on emotional mountain fell on him at some point for some reason. No one's got into details on that, and that was kind of his point about this is a personal matter. Let's leave it alone. I mean, maybe it'll come out, but yeah. But the implication is that he just needs a little bit of time, and that when he comes back and when he's ready to come back, that he'll be ready to, as I said in my first story, ready to beat the other guy. You know, like that's his thing. Beating the opposite guy is what he is passionate about, and he had not been able to do that. He was struggling to do that, and that was
within the first 48 hours of this being announced. There was sort of somebody, some reporter had mentioned that maybe it would be the duration of the road trip. That isn't.
Yeah. That was my impression.
Obviously.
That was my impression, that it was at least the road trip, and that. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, much like the Demko return timeline, it's anybody's guess here, isn't it? Like it just keeps getting pushed here. It doesn't feel like it's imminent, does it?
No, it doesn't. And it's another. Like you mentioned the Demko situation. It's another situation that does seem. I mean, I can understand in terms of mental health why it should be player driven. But there is an element. I'm curious to see how we'll look back at this period of time. You know, because if you read the CBA, under the CBA, it is up to the team to determine when the player plays again. Right? Like health is a team. The team has the final hammer. But there has clearly been moves around the league where this has been shifting away. Right? You think about Jack Eichel, for instance.
For sure.
Robert Lehner, yeah. Although
perhaps a bit more of a complicated situation.
They're all complicated.
They're all complicated, but I mean, mental health. Mental health. The only symptoms you have are what the patient tells you they have.
Yes.
Right. So.
Yes, but at the end of the day, for Demko, I don't know. I don't know whether there's someone sitting there saying, "Hey, you're ready to go? You could go, don't you think?" I mean, I know there's people who want to. I don't know. That's not something any of us have been able to sort out. But it does seem to be very much on how comfortable are you ready to go? What do you think? Because it is that one is an unusual injury, and so part of me wonders: is this have we reached some kind of turning point in terms of how player health is handled, especially with sort of serious issues, whether that's in your leg or in your head? But no, it certainly doesn't feel like. I mean, it doesn't feel like he is imminently going to be playing. Whether he's going to be playing Friday. I mean, my impression is that he's been doing everything he knows to do physically outside of playing and practicing, I suppose, with the team. But it's not like he's sitting on a couch somewhere. I mean, metaphorically, I'm sure he is, but physically, he's
on Demko. Would you bet moderate sums of money that he would play versus Columbus or Tampa? If I gave you both of those games as options, would you jump on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wrote a month ago was that that everything was tracking towards by the beginning of December. Well, now we're in the first week of December, so if everything is on track, and that was sort of things go right, everything works out, we hope that he will be ready to go.
I mean, if you buy what they've been saying about, they want him to be ready after after he plays. They want to be able to take care of him and cool him down and all that sort of stuff. Tampa seems like the right nod because then you got the rest of the evening to sort of do some warm down.
Yeah, right. I mean, the only thing about Tampa, though, of course, is that it's an unconventional pregame, right?
Right. You don't get warmed up as conventional.
It's different. Yes. Yeah. So to me, if you're going to pick a first game, it's either Friday or what's the next game after?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Blues.
To me, it's probably more like Friday or Tuesday, just because those are regular game days. They're not the weird modification that is.
Right. And you might as well get into the regular swing of things. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that said, I don't know. I mean, one of the questions I do actually have, I'm going to be probing into, getting out of that arena on Friday night is going to be a gong show. So
you might as well stick around and cold plunge. Honestly.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
I can't believe
it's going to be like
I cannot believe they actually scheduled this game up against the first of the last nights of Taylor Swift's global domination tour. It's not like the weirdness that we had in the spring where it's Pearl Jam or Justin Timberlake or whatever. It's like this all conquering tour that has been everything to everybody everywhere, and they're having a security perimeter, all these things, and let's keep playing hockey.
Well, even Sunday's going to be a gong show too. I mean, getting out because the Swifties will be there by 3:00. Rest you.
And on the back of doing this with the Grey Cup,
yeah.
I mean, in England, the cops would say absolutely not. Right? The crowd control thing, all the soccer, the cops have huge say in crowd control. They would be like, absolutely not. What are you doing? Different country.
Are you daft? Go back.
Are you daft?
I know you don't want to get too deep on this, but if you'll permit me a Four Nations question, are Besser and Demko snubs on Team USA?
Demko, I understand why not. I mean, it's if he were healthy, he'd be in. I think that's clear.
Of course, you can always replace, though. So, I wondered if they would go with here are 3 goaltenders,
right, and here we're going to go the other
just
way.
Replace Demko later.
Yeah. I suppose. I mean, you could have done that, but I think realistically, I understand why they just don't want to create the question. And Besser, listen, he had a great season last year. I would not have been surprised for him to be picked. But they got, they got a lot of wingers, and in the end, the pace is an issue at that level, I suppose. The fact is that he's a really great NHL winger, but he has one recent really strong season under belt. I mean, he's been in very good. I think he suffers a little bit from people not necessarily understanding who is, and of course they've scouted this team out. They know who all these guys are. So Besser is I suppose I would call him a mild snub. I am a huge. I think people know I'm a huge Brock Besser guy, but that's because I watch him every night. So I don't watch.
And also, to be fair, that's a really good-looking team, like with some really good-looking wingers, right?
The U.S. has had good top sixes for a long time in best on best. It's been they now flush out four lines just like Canada does quite easily.
Do they ever? And the strength on the wing there is notable, like to the point where now they're going to have really good centers playing over on the wing, much like Canada.
Well, that's
has had
it.
in the past.
That's the thing. I mean, that is the other thing, right? Is that sort of positional flexibility. You could move a center to the wing, and
like Brock Nelson's not great, but he's a center, right? Like he can play down the middle. Yeah, he can play down the middle. So, like,
I'm looking at I'm seeing mock-ups with Eichel and Trocheck playing on the wing. But yeah,
well, that's it. Like,
there's a lot of different ways that they can. Trocheck was an interesting one, but anyways, let's move on because I know you don't want to suffer this. And the goalies are Hellebuck, Ottinger, and Swayman. So
I mean, just
again, not much lost.
Who is he knocking out of there? Right, he's knocking out Connor. He's not knocking out Gensel. He's not knocking out. Are we calling Jack Hughes a winger? I don't know what we're calling Jack Hughes.
No, we're calling Jack Hughes a center.
He's a center.
He's not knocking out Kreider. He's not knocking out Larkin. He's not knocking out Matthews. He's not knocking out Kachuk.
The end of last year, like Tage Thompson, Jason Robertson are on every USA team, and they're griping in Utah and Montreal about Caulfield and Keller. Okay, moving on.
Friedman's
finally.
Let me just get to the Nils Höglander thing. Let's just put that continues to be a file that's pushed here.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any update from your side of things on that?
Yeah, I think I was on Rinkwide. I was trying to think when I said this. It was a program in the Nation Network's empire. I was on Rinkwide with Jeff, and we were talking about just where he's at, and a lot of it surprises me. Like he like I said this a few times now. He had a good start to the year. Rick Tocchet, I mentioned his name and wanted I think I've mentioned, people see the scrums. We get those 6 or 8 minutes or whatever with Rick, and then and you can ask him a question, and he'll stick around for like 10 minutes, and he is a hockey evangelist. He is very excited to talk about all kinds of things, and so I was taken aback, and he grew in stature when I mentioned Nils Höglander, and this was early in the season. Oh, this guy, blah 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 blah, and it's just been the complete. The Nils Höglander experience has been the complete opposite. And he has lost his way so badly. And now you look at where he's at in the rock. Like, I get why teams are interested, because they're saying, well, he's kind of a spare part. I mean, great, he's playing on the fourth line, but he's now in that old Ray, to steal the line from Ray. Like, the moment they stop asking you to do more, pretty soon they're going to start asking you to do a whole lot less, and that's a bad place to be. And that's kind of where Höglander is. Like, that's a roster spot that in the long run you'd rather use on a guy who can kill penalties and make a mess on the forecheck. I mean, Höglander makes a mess on the forecheck, but he's not doing anything with it, and that is a problem. If he were producing in third, fourth line minutes, as they clearly want him to be because they keep putting him out there, but he's not, and that's the problem. So it doesn't surprise me that the teams are interested in him nonetheless.
Would you trade him straight up for Marcus Pettersson?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can do that straight up, all day, every day. Because you need, fundamentally you need to shore up your second pairing, and that is a redeployment of a player of a sort of what's the word? I hate the word asset. That's redeployment of talent in your roster. Because right now, he's not exactly pressing anybody above. Like, he's not taking anybody's spot away above him on the lineup, right?
Not above him, no. And with this Lekkerimäki call-up, you wonder, are you better off as an organization right now giving Lekkerimäki more looks rather than just, continuing
I
to
just
put
think that's
Höglander
I think that's I think that's selling very low on Höglander for a rental 4-5-ish defenseman who's not great with the puck at $4 million. But that's just me.
Yeah, I get why you're saying that. I think if
He's
you're
a better
trying to
Susie,
win now,
though.
I think if you're trying to win now, Pettersson becomes a very good partner for Susie. Right? Or partner. Sorry.
So he's playing his offside now.
Well, I'm
Patterson.
sorry. He's a very good
Becomes
partner
a
for
partner
whoever
for
you're playing
Myers.
with on the second pairing. He become which is is why Pettersson's not ideal. Listen, but I still think he makes your group better. Right?
Yep.
I think you rather Matt, listen. If that's offered to you and that's all you have, yes. I think you're still chasing after someone better. I think
He makes your group he makes your group better, albeit Susi's been better here. Jeff was knowing that.
Yeah.
We talked about that. Susi's been better, and Brandstrom's been pretty good too. So,
I'm not worried. So to be clear, I'm not worried.
A rental right side guy, Peach, that's a different matter for me.
Yeah, I think
a rental higher up the pedigree chain than Pettersson, like a legit, a 3-4 as opposed to a 4-5. That's a different matter.
I mean, here's the only thing I'll say about Pettersson. Listen, there have been choices made in Pittsburgh about who is partnering either with Karlsson or Letang, and Pettersson has been choice number one, right? Like, he is above Matt Grzelcyk and above Ryan Graves now. Now, obviously, that's not a very good team, but there is this internal belief still in that player, and he's doing on a team that's struggling to defend. He's actually doing a very good job.
Yeah. So the other thing there, contextually, Karlsson is either impossible to play with, or no, it's true. We've heard this from many different to find Erik Karlsson the right partner, especially in the new context, the new age of good defensemen should really play with another good defenseman who's decent with the puck, because that's when you get the most out of them.
Yeah,
that's not Karlsson. So I think people are just resigned to, just go get a defensive defenseman who stands at his own blue line and let Karlsson play rover and do it that way. So So you're right. Contextually, it's a bad team with bad left side defense. That's why he's playing up. Secondly, it is difficult to play with Erik Karlsson.
Okay, Peach, before you go,
Roenick, I want to get to Roenick.
Cole McWard, is he going to play though on this call up?
I guess so. I mean, they are very happy with where he's at. They need to see where he's at in the AHL. Mm-hmm. And, clearly they need to see where he's at in the NHL. They need to understand their options going forward. I do not think Cole McWard is the solution to Carson Soucy's long-term defense partner, right? I mean, I wrote this yesterday, right? The long-term ambition, I believe, with the Canucks is, Roenick comes back, assuming there are no other substantial injuries. Roenick comes back at the end of January, goes back to being Hughes' partner, and you are finding a new partner for Carson Soucy because you're bumping Tyler Myers down to the third pair where he will thrive. So, yeah, I mean, I do not think Cole McWard is going to be the solution to that question. But I think the Canucks also believe he has an NHL future. And, yeah, him being called up.
His profile's a good one.
His profile's a good one, and him being called up, yeah, I mean, listen, the fact they've made the choice to go into LTI, they probably didn't have that choice anymore, like they had to. But it still was like, okay, I mean, you're taking advantage of the roster situation here now. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I think what that also tells you that... What's that?
We knew LTIR was going to arrive.
Inevitable.
It was inevitable.
Yeah. But I think in the end, it's also a thing about listen, if this is where they're going to operate, if they do make a trade, which, as I said, Jim Rutherford said, there ain't no rush to do. But if they do make a trade, it could be more substantial than we were expecting.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you whether Roenick or LTIR means they've got something coming or they think they're close on something.
Yeah, I mean, what it means to me is that they are shuffling their. I mean, it is an active choice to reshuffle your. They were running short on time because of the fact that Demko's not back, and they have inevitably. It also makes clear to me that Artur Shilovs will not be on the roster because they are going to need that cap space.
Of course.
The plan had been to keep all three, but I just don't. I just think they've now come to a point where that's not going to be. And of course, not having Miller on the roster. I mean, Miller comes back and maybe things change. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But
and of course, McWard is going to play because all he's got to do is be better than Desharnais or Friedman. So he's going to get that look, I think, on merit. But I think he's also going to get that look because of what you outline, and that is you got to know where you're at with him and if he's a possibility.
Yeah, exactly.
For your third pair down the line.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Glad we got that sorted at the top of the interview. You were
There's a lot. There's a
shook there.
A lot of grist for the mill here today.
Clear as mud? No. We clearer? Is it
We're clear.
Okay. It's not foggy.
Home.
Take care, guys.
Sekeres Price from the historic Wall Center.
We're very patient here at the Nation Network. We understand that you all have stuff to do and that Black Friday shopping can be a little bit hectic. So that's why we gave you a week, Black Friday week, if you will. And that's coming to a close. 48 hours to go here, depending on when you're listening to this. Mm-hmm. So get on your gear, get on your horse, if you will, and go to nationgear.ca and see the very latest, the classics from the Nation Network shows, or part of the My City collection that has just dropped as well. It's all included in the Black Friday sale at nationgear.ca. So if you've got a hockey fan in your life, and they may not even be Canucks fans, and that's okay, there's something for everybody at nationgear.ca.
Rob Williams is the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its Offside Sports Vertical. Rob the Hockey Guy on Twitter. Rob, not particularly a Taylor Swift guy. We'll get to that in a moment. How are you, Rob? Good to see you.
Doing great, guys. How are you?
Very well. Very well.
Who has stepped up most in the JT Miller absence?
I think it's got to be. I know. People are pointing to Elias Pettersson, for good reason. But I think, for me, it's Jake DeBrusk. I mean, this was a guy that when they brought him in and he had that rough stretch, 10 games without a goal to start the season, brought in to play with Elias Pettersson. I think it took like 4 games before he was off, 2 to 3 games before he was off that line, and like they're trying out Arshdeep Bains with Pettersson, and you're going, oh my God, here we go again. And suddenly those two seem to have chemistry. And DeBrusk, I think, is he's on a really good pace now, right? Like he's been on a tear, had the hat trick, a couple of overtime winners. I think he's showing that he can score in multiple ways. And I think another big key though here is that, he's not replacing Miller in the lineup in the sense that he's not a center. He's not playing on the top. He hasn't replaced Miller on that line, but he has replaced Miller on the power play. Not necessarily playing the same role, but the spot opened up on the power play, and I think that's helped obviously boost his totals for the goals he's contributed on the power play. But that also, I think, kind of helps like a little bit, right? You get that power play goal. Now suddenly you're feeling better about yourself at even strength. And, I think there's a big difference when you're playing on PP2 versus when you're playing on PP1. The real opportunities to add to your totals is on the first unit.
The second unit almost never plays.
No, they stay out for a long time.
That's been the trend now.
Do we reset to the start of the season then when Miller does come back? Let's say he played tomorrow night. He won't, folks. But would you just go back to then Besser and Miller and just keep the duos back together? Or, is Besser doing enough on this line that you'd be loath to break up the trio?
Yeah, in the short term, when you bring somebody back, I think you can go, okay, we're not going to force anything. If something's working, yeah, you can stick with it, and maybe you find somebody else with Miller. But I think ultimately, we've seen enough from Miller and Besser that we know that duo is a one you probably shouldn't split up. And what a great situation they'd be in if you have DeBrusk and Pettersson. That was the plan going in, right? DeBrusk and Pettersson
2 pairings
on one line
going,
and you've got Miller and DeBrusk on the other, and you just need to find that third guy for each line. Where I don't think you don't necessarily need 3 first line players to have a really good first line, or 3 second line players to have a really good second line. You need 2, and then you need a very good complementary player. we go back to the Sedins and Burrows, right? You got 2 Hall of Famers, and you got Burrows. You know, I mean, he put up some good numbers, but like, I don't know if a lot of people would say like that's a bona fide number 1, you know, first line winger, but he fit perfectly with them. It was a great complimentary player.
Like the way Suter's shooting, guys, is Suter, Miller, Besser a great line when he does come back? I mean, I think you just go back to that. I
got no problem with that at all. Yeah, I mean, and I think, but you have the ability to shuffle some guys in and out depending on who's going, and they've got more depth on the wing this season than they did last season. So you're not like relying on Suter like it's your ride or die with Pius Suter. But yeah, that would be that seems like a good option to me. I wonder where Connor Garland fits in this. I remember our conversation from a few weeks ago of like, you know, is Garland, does he go back to being with Joshua on the third line when everyone's healthy? I look at Garland as one of their best wingers. So to me, Garland's got to fit on one of those lines. And then you figure out the third line from there.
Yeah, I agree. I would put Garland with Pettersson and DeBrusk. Of course, you know, the other thing you got to consider there is your right shots, right? And I know some guys like to play their off wing and whatnot, and that's fine, but they have typically played Garland at right wing. They have typically played Besser at right wing. They have typically played Sherwood at right wing as well. Does Höglander for a rental defenseman, either Marcus Pettersson or of that ilk, appeal to you, Rob?
Oof. I loathe to do the rental thing. I feel like that's something you can't go back to that well every single time. Just like you can't go to the trade your first round pick every single year. Like, to me, that's a move you've got to make, you know, at the right time. And I think it made sense last season. Like, everything was going their way. You could see, okay, you know, maybe this will be their year. I'd be loath to do that just for a pure rental. I think you need to get something else back. But they do need to make a decision here on Höglander. Like they, you know, is this a guy that can play for Tocchet? You know, like he seemed to find a niche last season. You know, he put up goals, you know, and especially looked good in a depth role on a third or fourth line. Somehow, you know, he's clearly fallen out of favor early on this season. So, you know, I think you got to. That's where the decision comes in. Like, is this just another Kuzmenko, Daniel Sprong situation? If it is, the sooner the better you move off from him, where you still got that glow of the 24-goal season from a year ago. You know, what you don't want to do is hold on to him, you know, ruin his confidence, play him down in the lineup, have his stats suffer, and then all of a sudden you're settling for scraps for him at the trade deadline.
Okay,
and I think that's we're fast approaching that.
Let me walk you through a scenario. It's the final of the Four Nations Cup. The United States beats Canada 5-1. JT Miller has a goal and an assist. Quinn Hughes has 3 assists. Are Canucks fans disappointed?
They'd be conflicted, of course.
Conflicted, I mean, or actually kind of happy? Because I would bet the latter.
Blake, my mind went in like 3 different ways when you called it the Four Nations Cup. I'm like, okay, I was like, is there a cup? Like, do we know that? Is there a trophy for this?
Who's to say?
What do they get? What do they get when the winning team? I don't know what. You know, what are they? Do they trot out?
I'm sure Frank Gehry is on standby to design another trophy for them.
They've got, hey, there's 2 editions of the World Cup of Hockey trophy.
Yeah,
like,
borrow one,
they
exactly.
They could go back to the old one and just throw the Four Nations
glass tower
on the back here. I'm really curious to see like how wrapped up we get into this tournament. Like I was at the, you know, I've said before, I was at the World Cup of Hockey in 2016, and I was excited because like I was there and I was getting to cover the tournament with all these stars, and you know, the tournament was loaded with stars, but it just wasn't what I hoped it would be, and I don't think people were really into it. The fact it's in February, the fact that we get a bit more build up here through the, you know, fall and winter months, I think will help hype it up a little bit. But boy, it's a short tournament, right? Like there's just you get 3 games and then it's the final. But conversely, there's no dogs in there, right? There's no like Canada Kazakhstan game that you're like, all right, let's just.
You're not going to skip past many of these, no.
Exactly. No. Like all the games I think are going to be intriguing, but it's going to be, it's going to be here and gone so quickly, and it's a brand new tournament. Like, what are we going to think of this? I think that the part that's really intriguing is that Canada might not be the favorite going into this. You look at USA's roster, they are loaded, and they're loaded at every position. I do think that nothing really gets Canadian hockey fans going more than the possibility of losing, right? Like Canada losing. If Canada just comes in and steamrolls everyone, I think it'd be kind of boring. But you almost need a little bit of drama, a little bit of fear that Canada's going to get it knocked off its perch for this to really be a great tournament.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, though, Rob. The trophy, is it phallic or is it a receptacle? Can one drink out of it? Or are they going to get squirrely?
Frank Geary is alive, by the way. He's 95.
Yeah, well, no, yes, that was their go-to for whatever the last tournament they made up was called.
That was for the World Cup. That was for the World Cup.
Was it World Cup?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The Glass Tower.
Glass Tower.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember Brent Burns was asked in a scrum, like, do you know what the trophy looks like? I think it was like Greg Wyshynski or somebody asked him, like, do you know like what the world, like, do you know what it looks like? And he was like, oh yeah, and he just started describing the old trophy that they're not playing for in this. It was pretty funny.
Okay. Worst day to be downtown Vancouver minding your own damn business. Friday night or Sunday afternoon?
Oh, it's gonna be Friday night's gonna be the most hectic, I think, right? Like there's. Don't you think that first night of Taylor Swift will be like the biggest buzz? There'll be more buzz for that than the second two, and the Canucks play at the same time. Like that on Sunday, the Canucks play a matinee, and Taylor Swift's on it at 7:00. So yeah, I think that the chaotic, and then you also have rush hour traffic, Friday night traffic. That's going to be for sure the most chaotic part of the night. I do think everyone needs to take a breath on the Taylor. People talk about Taylor Swift stuff as if there's going to be like 100,000 people at BC Place. Like there's a max capacity at BC Place. Like there's not going to be.
I know, but people want to absorb the outside. Not many Grey Cup revelers go and just absorb the exterior of BC Place. Taylor Swift fans do.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I arrived to the Grey Cup 2 hours before kickoff. It was shoulder to shoulder through Terry Fox Plaza with people getting in because I think people recognized, want to make sure I'm in the venue for kickoff.
Yeah.
If you don't think those Swifties will be arriving in the venue well before the concert, you're crazy. I am so pleased that they took the official merch down to Canada Place.
Away from it, yeah.
Because a year ago this summer, July, we go down to the Blue Jays in Seattle. She's playing next door at Lumen. The merch was there, and you know how big the stadium district is there. The merch was there. We're talking a 1 p.m. first pitch on that Saturday, and there were thousands of Swifties in line for the merch. Like, it was a scene of humanity as a sold-out baseball game was going on alongside just the people there for the merch, let alone the concert. So don't you underestimate those Swifties, Rob. They will fill up Robson.
I was at that game in Seattle, too. I was there. But it was fine. We walked to the game.
No, it's fine because they have a ton of space around those stadiums, Rob. We don't have that space around our
that's
like you're talking Robson
stadium.
Street. These Swifties are gonna close Robson Street. Like the police may have an idea of where they're starting the closure on Robson Street, and you watch, the Swifties will come and they'll be like, oh, we better move the barricades a few blocks north of here because there's no way you're gonna be able to contain the masses who are heading down to the stadium.
This is the weekend
early.
They should have started drone taxi cabs. Like this should be the test weekend for people flying into the area and dropping off.
We really should have had beaming technology available
Yeah.
for this weekend.
Alas, no.
Rob, you enjoy. I look forward to all the content on the Daily Hive.
It's going to be the place to
On
be.
Taylor Swift. I already am going to the Daily. I saw the story you guys did yesterday. Did she release tickets last night, or there were inside? She did.
Yeah, guys, my TikTok algorithm is all goofy right now, so I'm getting like I got like the Taylor Swift ticket experts in my algorithm. Yeah, no, she released I think like a small drop yesterday, and
Man.
yeah. But no, they've got people like taking video from like the neighboring towers beside BC Place. You can see in those little windows, and they're like, well,
Right.
the chairs are now being set up on the floor and all these things. So
Yeah, right. And if I'm not mistaken, the police in the city have said if you don't have a ticket, don't come down here.
yeah, they're fencing the
I-
outside of the building.
Well, and that's fine, but I don't think there's any stopping Swifties. Like
Oh, I think
I
you'll
think
see-
there are thousands of people with it in their head. I just want to go down to the Stadium District, and I just want to hear the boom emanating from BC Place.
Yeah, they'll do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, they'll
but,
do that for sure.
But unlike any other artist, Blake.
Yeah. No.
Like-
You never see anything like this. No. Good luck to everybody.
Yeah. Good luck to you too, Rob. Thanks for this.
Thanks, guys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center, where if you've got your tickets for the big game, make it a full experience. Stay downtown at the Wall, 604-331-1000. Call the hotel. Ask for the exclusive Secure some price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. You can text the show, 778-402-9680. Email live at securesomeprice.com. It all goes to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
Going to have a Great Clips mailbag tomorrow.
Looking forward to it.
It's back.
Get your feedback in now if you want a chance to get in on the show tomorrow.
Absolutely. Buck Pierce met the media yesterday at the BC Lions North Surrey practice facility. He confirmed he is going to be the play caller. Head coach, play caller. Now, look, there was a time when I was very much against that because the head coach has a lot of things going on, including making decisions and calls on special teams and everything else that goes into it. It's typically cleaner when it's an offensive coordinator with the head coach, having the big foot when needed. But I've come around a little bit more on that, in particular because there's an alignment when it's head coach and quarterback, and then also, you lose your offensive coordinator, you lose your play caller, and that tends to. So, Buck, who called plays in Winnipeg, is going to be calling plays here for BC as well. He was also, we asked him about his coordinators. He didn't get very specific. He didn't get very specific in the press conference either. That said, Ryan Rigmaid and the general manager said, look, we have some coaches that we feel strongly about. We believe the head coach has to make the decision on his own assistants. That's a big part of this. Ryan Phillips, the defensive coordinator, is under contract to the Leos next year. I've also heard rumblings about him in Calgary potentially. So we'll see how that shakes out. Of course, Phillips and Mike Benavides, that's special teams coordinator, Benavides, the runner-up for the job, are still possible. Offensive coordinator Jordan McSimic has moved on to the Edmonton Elks. Yesterday we went through, or 2 days ago, we went through a pretty attractive class of Canadian free agents setting up for 2025. On the American side, Janarian Grant is a free agent.
Is he
And
really?
Boy, is he fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And look, Terry Williams may be reliable, but he wasn't very scary, Terry, this past season on returns. Grant would be just awesome in terms of being able to flip field position, give the Lions
But
a
also
little bit more explosiveness.
You
in the
also
return
play in a
game.
climate-controlled stadium for your entire schedule, where a guy like Janarian Grant
Exactly.
doesn't have to worry about footing.
Exactly.
Every single home game, you're guaranteed that he can make an impact based on field conditions.
Right.
And you're not guaranteed that
Right.
in every other place
Right.
in the CFL.
Yep. Willie Jefferson's a free agent. I'd be very surprised if he leaves Winnipeg. He's well-rooted in that community. Jake Seresna had an awesome year for the Argonauts at defensive tackle, led the CFL in sacks, or tied for. He's 30. That's, getting up there, but he was absolutely a difference maker. The Lions played a bunch of good defensive tackles this year, but I'm not sure they had a great one. He would be a standout. So, anyways, we'll see. We'll see how busy they get in free agency because, of course, they're paying their quarterback a whole lot, and they do want to re-sign Justin McInnes and Mathieu Betts, the two primary Canadian free agents they have. Not to mention they got a bunch of other starters, TJ Lee, Gary Peters, who are set to hit the market.
How old do you think Janarian Grant is?
Well, that's sometimes a tricky question because oftentimes these guys toil a little bit in the NFL before finally making it up here. I don't remember. I'm going to say 29.
Yeah, I wish he was.
Yeah.
He's
30-something.
Just turned 31.
Did he? Okay.
So that's a
He
little bit.
still has his fastball,
He
though.
does.
Like, you watch him this year return kicks. Like, he
I
was
was
still
the reason
special
I looked,
teams player of the year.
The reason I looked was I was thinking, can you turn him into a better receiver? But he's probably the best receiver that he's going to be at this stage of the game.
Tiger Woods says he is a long way from being tour ready in terms of competitiveness. The Hero World Challenge going on, his tournament, or one of his tournaments this weekend. There was a rumor that Tony Finau was going to bounce and go to live, but Tony says, no, I was just dealing with a little injury there. Everything is cool. Still no deal, Blake. Like, you remember last year, by the end of the year, was supposed to be a deal like that. It was just always a soft deadline, but it was this time last year where we were sitting there going, okay, any day now, looks like, sounds like they're going to announce something, and
This is the problem.
it continues.
When you're dealing with the wealth fund, though, like you're dealing with a partner that just doesn't care about the money. Mm-hmm. So how do you negotiate something where you try to maintain some salvage something in the negotiation, but the other side doesn't care what you get out of it? Mm-hmm. It's a tough negotiation.
Mm-hmm. Poll question results from Wednesday. We asked you, is there such thing as a moral victory for the Canucks this season? Yes or no? What did the people say?
People said no.
They said no. Percentage?
85.
58.
58, huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is something we didn't think of yesterday. Good on Michael for bringing it up. He says, yes, a conference final loss.
Mm-hmm.
We would all view a conference final loss as progress, right? If they lost the conference final, Game 7 on home ice or Game 6 on home ice, would they not get an ovation like they got following the Game 7 second-round loss to Edmonton last year? I think they probably would.
I would dispute that even is in the category of moral victory. So, because by virtue of making it to the Final Four of the league, again, your moral victories, by their definition, are in lieu of actual victories. And to get to the Final Four, you've had a lot of actual victories.
Yeah. We saw a whole lot of no moral victories are for losers in the comments. I'll read a couple of yeses. Drew says, yes, based on the injuries to key contributors and scheduling context. Last night, Tuesday night, good example, end of a 6-game road trip against the best team in the NHL. The Canucks played admirably, could have won, no problem there. It's all about what they do in April onwards. Malkin says, in yesterday's context, Tuesday night again, getting a point was absolutely a good result, so should be considered a moral victory. Loser points too, right?
The injury part,
you could argue loser points are moral victories.
The injury part is absolutely a road to go down, except the Canucks have proven they can win with their decimated lineup. Mm-hmm. So getting a single point is sort of like, yeah, that's fine.
I do not have an error or an omission, anything to self-report.
No. It was a good show yesterday.
Clean sheet again for Blake. Mm-hmm. I thought so.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. We're live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays, and of course support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.